Hello, everybody. My name is Vivian Xavier, and I am the co-founder of Kantara Independent Film Festival. We initiated and founded this film festival primarily because we wanted to have a global community of filmmakers grow, uh, so that the filmmakers in Pakistan, they could have a place to show their films, specifically the independent filmmakers, because there is no such avenue for them. And we're hoping that the initiation of such things will help in help them in the future, so that they have an avenue to exhibit the films, but also producers and finances can find these filmmakers to hopefully tell their stories. Um, Another reason was to be able to show the kind of content that is happening elsewhere in the world, the short films that are happening, by filmmakers from around the world, and hopefully that will give some impetus to the Pakistani filmmakers to realize what quality storytelling is, and that there are many other filmmakers like them who are eager to tell their stories, and hopefully this platform will help build that community where they can learn from each other, where they can be inspired from each other, and tell the stories that really need to be told. But the festival is not just about showing movies; it's about having discussions about independent filmmaking, in Pakistan, but globally as well. And talking about Pakistan, we wanted to invite, and we have with us a documentary filmmaker who, for the most part, doesn't need much introduction. Her name is Haya Fatima Iqbal. She's a documentary filmmaker from Pakistan. She's a winner of an Oscar, an Emmy. But she's so much more. She's a dear friend, and I'd like to talk to her about how how and what documentary filmmaking means in Pakistan, and she is putting her best foot forward to create a space for documentary filmmakers in Pakistan. So let's get talking to Haya and learn more from her. Hey Haya,
Hello.
can you hear
I
me?
Yes, I can. I hope you can hear me too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think the video is a little delayed. I from my end, but I don't know if that's happening to you.
It's not happening to me. Actually, I can see you perfectly well without a delay.
Okay, good. So I've just done a brief introduction about you, Haya. So I'd like you to talk a little bit more about yourself, and just give a brief introduction, and then we can start talking about your journey as a documentary filmmaker in Pakistan.
Cool. So I am a documentary filmmaker primarily. I am based in Pakistan. I sometimes produce films. For the most part, I think so far I've produced more films than I've directed them. But then some years back, I also delved into shooting documentaries. So I do a bit of that as well, depending on what kind of a project it is. I run my own production house. Apart from that, I am also co-founder of the Documentary Association of Pakistan, which is also exactly like you guys. We are also trying to just basically promote the art, the culture of just watching documentaries, because that's just almost non-existent in Pakistan. People still go to the cinema, those who can afford it, to watch commercial cinema, to watch fiction films. But documentaries almost are like those things that are produced in Pakistan, but then most of the consumption is done by audiences that are based outside of Pakistan, and audiences who are mostly not Pakistan as well. So we're trying to sort of, there's no revival in this category. We're just trying to initiate and create this culture first of all. And then apart from that, I also teach at Habib University. So I teach undergrad students. That more related to teaching young students how to do print journalism, how to do basic photography, a lot of like street reporting, basically stuff that can hopefully help you to make better documentaries as well, or can just make you be better people who can ask better questions. So that's like the summary of the few things that I do.
Great. So Tell us a little bit about your journey from, because how does a girl from Pakistan, end up becoming a two-time Oscar winner, documentary filmmaker?
One time.
And yeah, one time. Okay, I take that back. One time. Sorry, but nonetheless, you still are. But how does that happen? Well, how did you get interested in, like you say, asking those important questions?
Right. I think, I mean, obviously, I mean, when you talk about the awards and all the prestigious things that sometimes happen to us, that obviously, that never happens by plan. I think you can ask, you can ask like people who are just like 1,000 times more accomplished than me, and you'll always, like we'll always get to know that there was never a plan. Like the plan was always to, put your best stuff in, put in the best effort that you can, and then see where the work goes. And then sometimes you put in a lot of effort, you're really proud of a film, and then it it becomes popular, it becomes very much watched, but it may or may not get like the laurel that everyone sort of talks about. But essentially my journey is rooted in me getting some basic journalism training first. My undergraduate was in mass communication, so I was mostly trained in print journalism. And by the time I was about to graduate, I got to know that I was getting more interested in television. And this is like, basically, this is something that was happening a decade ago, right? So at that point, uh, broadcast news and TV news in Pakistan was it had already bloomed, and it was a very respected, um, uh, like it was a very respected medium for its accuracy, for its bravery, for its courage. So it was like an interesting place to be. Slowly and gradually, we see that like even news media in Pakistan has deteriorated for multiple reasons. Some of it is censorship, some of it is self censorship, all of that. So that was a time when I was starting to get interested in TV, and I knew that I was enjoying the visual medium more, even when it came to sort of telling daily news. But then, as I spent some time, like owing to some internships, etc., as I spent more time in the newsroom, I also started to realize that when we would go, or when I would be sent to cover a certain story, there would be so much in a story, and we had to sort of, just like make it very compact, and we had to turn it into like a 2 minute package or like a
Hmm.
3 minute package at max. And that's where I started to realize that, well, Pakistan has a lot of stories, clearly. I mean, and this was just in Karachi at that point. I hadn't traveled to like other parts of Pakistan that much at all. Um, and there were so many stories to tell, but then there was not like that much depth that was possible, to sort of cover the stories, which is sort of the default nature of TV news anyway. So that's how I started to get more interested in documentary, and that's how I applied to a documentary program for my masters. You and I have been on the same scholarship, and I went to documentary school, you went to film school. And so after I came back, basically that's when I essentially professionally started to make documentaries. Before that, I was always someone who was interested in learning to make them, but I had never really tried too much. Like my first documentary film was my thesis film, so that's how it all started. And then since then, it's just been like one step after the other. It's been very organic. It's not like you can't really plan it. I mean, I think you can only plan life so much. So I started to work with Sharmeen Obechanoy. That was my first ever job that I got after after doing my documentary masters. And since then, it was just like one step after the other. You make small films, you make big films. Then I went freelance after that. Now that's happening. Now I'm doing freelance, but then I'm also doing a couple of other things. So it's very organic. It's very step by step. There was just a lot of hard work, I think, involved, honestly. Just a lot of hustling, to be honest. And I mean, up to this day, like there aren't many days in my week which are sort of vacant. There's always
Hmm.
like three different things happening in a day. So I feel like I've also had the luxury and the privilege of having time all to myself that I could really utilize to put into my work. I haven't really had like disruptions or distractions that can happen. So I feel like I'm blessed that way. But then I think it's just been a lot of like putting a lot of hours and putting in a lot of mind work and a lot of like work, as is the case with any form of filmmaking. It's not just create, you can't just be creative in
Yeah.
the head. You really have to go out and execute it, and you have to just be like, a doer. And I feel like me and like all of my peers, we like, if we are something at all, we're just because we've just tried to get like whatever we could in the field.
So you know, keep keep doing what you're doing. That's the main.
Exactly. There's no, I mean, yeah, you can't, like, there's no, like, you can't, like, filmmakers, I feel like they can't give up,
Mm,
with, and because the thing is that if you give up or if you do a shoddy job, everyone's going to know that you're doing a shoddy job. I feel like sometimes if you make a bad Excel sheet, only like an accountant would know that you've done something wrong in it.
yeah.
But if it's a bad film, everybody knows it's a bad
Yep.
film, right? And people with film training, people without film training, I mean, I feel like now towards that stage where I'm less scared of feedback from peers and like more
Mm,
scared of feedback from like the
yeah.
audience. If they don't like it, they will just switch. They will just stop watching after 3 minutes.
And that's become
So yeah,
even more important, uh,
absolutely.
in these days where it's at one point, when we were growing up, it was you could switch the remote control on, switch the channel,
Yeah,
but now it's like all these different platforms. You can just get it
you
another
have like a
subscription.
thousand, exactly, a thousand other things to go to. Everyone's attention spans are shorter,
Mm.
and then I think with this sort of pandemic situation, like everyone is at home, everyone's just consuming a lot more content. Like I think like, and everyone's online.
Mm.
So I feel like it's become even more important to create more engaging content because everyone's kind of consuming content for the sake of it. Also, like there's nowhere else to go, so people are just in front of a screen. So yeah, so it's really like, yeah, it's a challenge.
Mm. So for you, being like you already spoke about it earlier, that documentary filmmaking in generally, not just Pakistan, but generally is seen as the redhead stepchild, and no one really gives it any importance at all. But in Pakistan, it's even more so. But then, as a female filmmaker, how was that? Because it's sort of like a double burden almost. Like it's almost like a double-edged sword. How has that impacted you as as a filmmaker and as documentary filmmaker?
Right. I think there are various layers to this question. Sometimes I feel like, I mean, like when you have created a documentary, the audience consumption sort of patterns in Pakistan are very, they're kind of dismal because there's not a lot of people who are interested in watching documentaries. There's not a lot of people who even know that a new documentary has come out, right?
Mm.
Unless you sort of promote it yourself, right? It's not like there's no newsletter that comes out. There's no Instagram account that only keeps an eye on the hot happenings of the doc world in
Mm.
Pakistan. And every year there aren't that many documentaries that come out, right? So I feel like while the as soon as your film is ready, that's when it hits you every time that, oh wow, this, like, not a lot of people are watching it. But when you are making it in the field, I feel like because Pakistan has had like a robust journalism, um, uh, uh, like, landscape basically, and while a lot of people would say that, oh, like, these journalists are everywhere and this media does this, there's still, like, in the common, sort of in the ordinary Pakistani's mind, there's still a lot of respect for the media and a lot of deference to the power that the media has, right? So when you go in, I feel like if you went in and said that, oh, I'm doing like a commercial, like a fiction film shoot over here, people might take you a little non-seriously. Like, people might just sort of hang around to just watch for longer because the fascination and the awe is greater. But I feel like people just take you as a journalist when you introduce yourself to them as a documentary filmmaker. So that sometimes, I think, most often it actually like works in our benefit, because when, as a woman especially, when you're out on the street and you have a camera on your shoulder and someone comes to ask you, kya ho raha hai, what's happening, and you say, I'm working on a documentary, it's almost like people just back off because they, in their heads, it's something serious that's
Mm.
happening. It's not some fun activity, it's not entertainment that's happening. So many times I've seen that people would either back off or like would start just taking you more seriously because they see you sometimes as this serious filmmaker, or like almost like this borderline journalist, so I feel like that automatically gives you some extra respect, which is also sad because that says a lot about how people view filmmakers in general. But that is that benefits me, at least when I head out on my own into the field. And in terms of like, and then coming on to the second part, like being a woman, being out in the field, I feel like, I mean, like this, I'm just going to be like doing a bit of social commentary right now. But the thing is that, in Pakistan, like, so many people do not have issues with what you're doing in the field if you are a woman, like professionally. Like, they don't really care whether you're making a 10-minute documentary, or you're making a 30-minute documentary, or whether you're doing an indie documentary project, or whether you're doing it for the BBC. No one really cares. No one What people care about is what your conduct it is, on the streets as a woman. And I feel like that is also, I mean, also a reflection of how women are observed in our society, how women are perceived in our society. So it's almost like if your conduct is that of a very graceful woman, at the lack of a better word, everyone's fine with you, right? But if you go and if you start sort of if you start breaking the rules of how a woman should act, or like a good woman, quote unquote, should act, that's when the trouble begins. So I feel like it's really, I mean, it also shows like the society's hypocrisy, obviously, that, like people will only accept a certain kind of a woman, or people will
Hmm.
only accept you if you're behaving in a certain way. But I feel like, obviously, like men, like sometimes men are not trusted enough. No one is going to tell a man, like a male producer, to come into their house suddenly. But if there's a woman on the team, or if the woman is leading from the front in a team, everyone will be like, oh yeah, sure, come in, and let's sit and talk, because everyone kind of trusts you more. But on the other side, you have to just watch every step. Like, you have to be very watchful about how you're laughing, how you're walking, how you're talking. If you play by the rules, then like you are the most respected person, despite the fact that you are a woman plus you're a filmmaker. But if you're not doing that, if you're not playing by like the Pakistani rule book of how a woman should behave outdoors, then you're in trouble. So I feel like there's some level of performativity, which maybe like men may not have to do that much. Like I don't smoke, but like if I were, I would have a terrible time, at a shoot, because men can
Hmm.
really stand in a corner anywhere and they can catch a smoke in between, two scenes, and that's that. But like if you're a woman filmmaker who smokes, then like you're in trouble, because you can't really smoke outdoors. You can't really be seen smoking, because if you're seen smoking, then you're labeled as a certain kind of a
Hmm.
woman, which means that your access into homes would be questioned because you're not a good woman, right? So it's a lot of layers. It's just like, I think after many many years, you kind of just learn how to sort of operate. It's really not about, I mean, like, whether you're a man or a woman filmmaker, doesn't matter. Whether you're a documentary maker, whether you're doing fiction, like, in the end, it really depends on how your conduct is on the field, whether you're respectful to people or not, whether you're empathetic towards them or not, whether you're kind towards them or not, whether you are like a nice person to talk to, or whether you are, like, telling people off just because you have a camera. But I feel like women have to follow some extra rules, basically.
So,
And you don't just talk
yeah,
about
please go
it too
ahead.
much, because that sounds like, if you talk about it too much as a woman, then you're whining. So we don't.
Has that been has that been a hindrance as well? Like, in terms of getting finance for documentaries and stuff like that. Sorry, I think we're having a bit of a technical difficulty. Sorry, can you hear me, Haya? Hello.
Yes,
Oh yeah,
I
sorry.
think both of us are back now. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So I'm saying that has that been a hindrance for you? Like, you're saying, quote unquote, you don't want to be seen as a female figure who's whining. Is that Has that hindered any projects, or has that been difficult for you?
Not really. because you see, I haven't whined that much. I've been conscious of that, right?
Hmm.
And I feel like I don't know how it's working for women who have spoken out more. Like I see that a lot with the younger generation, with let's say my students who graduate, who are at least a decade younger than me. They're very vocal about how they're treated, and I'm not sure how the men around them perceive them. If they perceive them as women who are using their voice to challenge some stereotypes, or whether they're seen as women who are just complaining all the time just because they don't want to work. So I'm not really sure how that's working out.
Hmm. But isn't that the whole point of this genre of filmmaking where you're opening up the discussion to something that is not usually perceived as the normal debate, or is rather put on the
Yeah,
side.
I mean, like sometimes like you're already tackling with so many stories and so many layers to a story that you don't want to be the story yourself, right? So like, I mean, like in a documentary, in a feature length documentary that you might be working on, there's so much to sort of take care of that sometimes your own issues have to, they eventually go to the back burner, because
Mm,
in the end you were really wanting to tell a great story.
mm,
That said, I'll also say something about the kind of nature that I have. I think I've, like, since I was a kid, I think I have been that person who tries to sort of just like focus on the target, like, look down and just keep working. So I feel like now I've started to speak up more about it, because I feel like now I can't be not taken seriously. Like if I was 24 and only talking about how there are more values that women have to sort of conform to, people would eventually say that, oh yeah, like, she's hasn't done anything but has a lot to say about how she's treated, right? So I feel like
mm,
I waited for the time to, first be known that I'm not, like, I can't be taken not seriously. And then now, like, when I have to say this now, I'm sure people give it more value, because they know that I come from a place of experience. I'm not
mm.
just saying it because it's the hot debate on Twitter.
Fair enough. Yeah. So I know from our recent conversation that you have just applied to a grant. How can you just talk a little bit about the process about applying to the grant, and what is the sort of is there any structure where documentary filmmakers in Pakistan actually have access to those or know about those, or what's the success rate for Pakistani documentary filmmakers, applying to these global grants, because filmmaking costs money. So, yeah.
Exactly. So I feel like, I mean, locally there aren't any platforms yet which fund documentary filmmakers. So it's almost like that situation where, like hundreds and hundreds of documentary filmmakers from Pakistan and across the world are just trying to compete in this very small sort of pool of of grants that are available to global filmmakers. Because as is, there are some grants that are only available to American filmmakers or Canadian filmmakers or UK filmmakers. So we really have like only a handful of opportunities that we apply to. Locally, there is nothing that's happening in terms of funding. There's not a lot of culture of individual donors so far, at least. I don't know if if that I don't think that category of people has even been tapped that much. But there's no, like, there hasn't I haven't seen like a lot of individual donors or a lot of corporate sort of funding documentaries, etc. It's just like us trying to get the grants like from
Mm,
other countries. Obviously the acceptance ratio isn't that high. I don't have the numbers, to be honest, but like, I mean, we don't really get to hear a lot of filmmakers getting those opportunities. It's not like the application must be bad. It's just like, I mean, there's so many people applying from across the world, and because all countries need representation, I mean, there's that truth as well, where like the same grant can't be given to like a Pakistani documentary filmmaker every year. Like
mm,
there's also like the structural systems of how grants work is also different. So it's just a lot of like it's just a lot of writing. Like, I mean, writing for money, writing to ask money is not something I like enjoy at all. So it's just a lot of thinking, rethinking, getting feedback from a friend, and then working on the document again, trying to be like be ahead, like much ahead of the deadline, not doing it at the last minute. So it's a lot of self discipline, and also like the readiness to fail, like, and you're applying with the idea, with the hope that you will get it, but with the realization that most likely you will not. That's how it works basically. And oftentimes it so happens that you could be applying for the same grant again and again, or like the same grants again and again, and you might get it at the third attempt, and you get it at the third attempt because by that time you have filmed enough for the potential donor to see that this is a film that will definitely get made. So it's a long, slow process. I think, like, I feel like if someone is working on their passion project on a documentary, like, I would, like, it would be great if they're working on it in their own city, because at least that that helps people to go to their shoot location anytime. If you're working on a project that is not in your hometown, then it becomes a problem, because then you keep on figuring about accommodation and transport and fuel and all of these expenditures that are very real. Like, it's not like we earn that much anyway. So for us to spend stuff on our passion projects is not, it doesn't come easy to everyone all the time.
It's interesting you say that, because I've had conversations with other filmmakers, and these are not documentary filmmakers by any chance. They're people who've just started out in the field, but in a matter of 4 to 5 years, they get burnt out because of the whole money thing, and then you have to sort of figure out a different stream of income. And I feel that seeing that in fiction is something that it's difficult to see. I'm sure in documentary it must be even more, because the audience, I feel, is just, like you said, is just not there, especially in Pakistan. So how do you ensure that people get to see your movies in Pakistan? I mean, I know you have an association now that is sort of dealing with that.
I think, yeah. I mean, I think early on, like, if a film ended up online, or if it was produced for an online platform, then that's great. Then you can promote it as much as you can. You do use it, doing it your own social media. You basically just like tell the world that the film is out. But when it comes to big films that are copyright protected, that are not on a streaming platform, that are not on YouTube, that were not made for the internet, those films never really never really are seen by people in Pakistan, because like, no one's going to use like their credit card for a pay-per-go film and like pay $5 to watch a documentary. Like, people don't have that kind of money in Pakistan. Matlab, it doesn't make sense. And then still, like, they will come out of it like sad, maybe, because documentaries are sometimes so intense. Like, it's not like they're going to have fun in $5. They're just going to come out grimmer and like in more grief, basically.
Hopefully more contemplative, though.
Contemplative, hopefully, yes. But like, also, like, when you are just chilling, like on your computer, like, sometimes you don't want to feel contemplative. Like,
Just
we
want
all
to watch the
we
next
just like
season of
want to watch, like, either like some good entertainment, or sometimes you just feel like watching trash. You just don't have the capacity to consume like facts and like like multiple perspectives. So earlier on, I mean, we really didn't have anything, and we couldn't do much about it. Like, it was not all, like, it's not that people were not trying. I mean, even with the films that I worked on with Sharmeen on, I mean, those films were never put online because of copyright, like, because of copyrights. But I mean, she did make it a point to to sort of take those films to school, to not schools, because I mean, I think they were not age appropriate, but like colleges and universities. So it's almost like this strange situation where the filmmaker first has to make the film, and then they have to apply for grants through which they can make the film travel across the country and do this campus tour, do this corporate sector tour. So it's really not, I mean, it's not very easy. So some filmmakers also get burnt out, and as soon as their film is acquired by a global broadcaster, they are just fine. They sell their film, they get the money, and they move on, because they, like, like, they are just done. And also, films take like 4 years, 3 years. to complete that, by that time, like, you just like, all right, whoever has watched it, like whoever did not watch it, it's fine. So some filmmakers also have the propensity for that. I feel like up till now I haven't reached that stage. I'm just like, I would really make a mad rush to take the film to as many places as I can, if I could, because I feel like there is just like so much value in our own people seeing our own stories and knowing our own people who we film, which is why then, me and my colleague Anam and a couple of other friends, we made the Documentary Association of Pakistan, because it's not like we wanted our films to be out. We wanted just all the amazing documentary work that's happening, whether it's short films or feature length documentaries, to just be consumed by people. Because after a certain while, Vivian, like, it started to happen to me that when I would meet some friends, or especially when I would meet extended family, they would always say that, yeah, you've gotten this award, but how are we going to watch the film? And this is your family telling you. It's not
mm,
like some, this is not like it's people who you meet, and and people who kind of have the same sort of financial background as you. So it's not like they can't pay, or they don't know that the film exists. But even they were like, yeah, I tried to look for your film, it's not there. And obviously it wasn't there, right? So which is why we started to do like this, this other sort of this festival, and we started to do a lot of screenings with that, because we thought that somebody has to try and change it. We may fail miserably, we might be successful for the next 5 years, and then our failure might hit us. Who knows what's going to happen, but at least we would know that we tried. And we want to not go through the, like, we don't want like our younger filmmakers to go through the pain that you and I have gone, or
mm,
our mentors have gone, where, like, everyone hates you for telling the truth, but no one has really watched the film.
mm, mm. It's it's funny you're talking about the distribution angle of things and how that is curtailed to quite a bit. I worked with you at Sharmeen for a very little time. I remember when her documentary "A Girl in the River" was, when it came out. But it took me going to South Korea and one of my professors getting a DVD of A Girl in the River for me to actually watch it, because there was no other way for me to watch it. And
Wow.
again, that was a class
Yeah.
where we were breaking down the documentary and the story, in the 5 act structure. But that's what it took for me to be able to watch the film, which was this
Wow.
whole
Yeah.
other country and this class where this professor saw the benefit in it, as a teaching tool.
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
and when you look back in Pakistan, like I remember even when Sharmeen won the award, where she was lambasted by a lot of people for all the negative reasons. So there are two sides to that question. Like, does that, obviously that becomes an issue for filmmakers in general, but how, have you met with that sort of criticism, and how have you been able to handle it?
I think, I mean, when you're making a film, like, you don't really bother about what the reaction is going to be, unless it's something that's super risky, or something that can, put your life or your character's life in danger. I think, like, documentary filmmakers have enough of a thick skin to not worry about how people are going to perceive it, because deep down you know that you are actually telling at least one side of the truth, right? So at least one. And so I feel like that is not a problem, like, when you are making a film. Like, I mean, and also, like, that's the catch then, that when your audience is not in Pakistan, when your funding pool is not in Pakistan, then sometimes, you just know that you will tell the story that you want to, because anyway, who knows if the film is going to be seen in Pakistan. So it's like this really weird, like, strange sort of situation, where sometimes you're just like, yeah, of course, like, like, who's going to stop me from telling the story? Because anyway, like, it's not like there's local stakeholders that will tell me to not tell the story.
Mm,
So there's that. But then once the film is ready, obviously, I mean, I think that whenever that hate, especially online, I think people don't have, people are not that baseless or unkind to say things surface, but I think online, I think the hate is pretty immense. I mean, I think in the case of A Girl in the River, obviously the hate was like, I mean, I think like 1,000 times directed more towards Sharmeen because she's the director, she was a film, etc. But obviously it trickles down to us as well because I mean, hate really also has boundaries like love, and so yeah. So I think initially it does hit you. It does. I mean, it's not a great feeling to to read some trash about yourself or you being called something. But I think, and trust me, like it hits you every time. It's not like it doesn't affect me at all. But I think I've just chosen to, I think, surround myself with friends, etc., who, like, if I'm feeling rather pathetic about some comments that I'm getting, I'll probably just go and share it with them that like, I really don't feel good today because this is happening. And I feel like that mechanism has worked more. Sometimes you choose to stay away from your phone, sometimes you choose to not pay too much attention. So I feel like moving on has become easier. It's
Okay.
not like it's not like it doesn't hurt any of us, but I think moving on has become easier because not, by now, after all of these years of experience in this, I know who are the people who I can go to and just like share my pain, and they'll just be sort of there for me. But that said, like, I mean, it's not like we don't love feedback. Like, we love feedback when it's about the film, about the work, about, and like in a 35-minute film there might be many things, many aspects that might get ignored. And I love it when people have like solid critical feedback to give, that like, I wish you had done this. Yeah, why did you was it a choice, or did you not have enough time to cover that in your story? But when these are these personal attacks, that's when you want to distance yourself. That's when you need a friend. Otherwise, if it's brutal feedback about the film, like, I mean, I am all ears, obviously. Like, I read that and I enjoy all of that. It's when people, and like, it's not all obviously also the majority. It's like these creeps who are just hiding behind the screens. Like, they have this habit of basically going personal, commenting on something on the basis of your looks, appearance, dress, etc. And that's just below the belt anyway.
Hmm.
But it's not like it doesn't hurt. Like, it hurts because it's supposed to. Like, I am not willing to be insensitive and not get hurt by it. I mean, people need to be more sensitive and not hurt me.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I guess you just this whole idea of you know sitting behind a computer and sort of saying whatever you want to say, thinking that it doesn't have consequences. I think it just generally, all across Pakistan, it's quite bad right now.
Exactly, across the world, and it's honestly not even limited to gender. Honestly, it's
Hmm.
beyond age, beyond gender, beyond nationality, beyond religion. Like, it really, like, I mean, that, like, online hate is just like, like, if you're unlucky, you will get it someday, and it's not doesn't feel nice.
Yeah, it's not fun at all. So
Yeah, never.
coming back to the Documentary Association of Pakistan, that's DAP. Can you shed a little light about why you guys started? I know it's you, Anam Abbas, Tazeen Bari, and who else? Because all of them,
Yes,
they're
Risham
fantastic
Wasim.
filmmakers.
Yeah, there's yeah, and apart from the three of us, there's Risham Wasim and there's Fahad Naveed. And so Fahad is more into journalism and multimedia journalism. Risham is more about digital video content. She heads Mati TV. Fahad works at Dawn, and then Tazeen and I are freelance documentary filmmakers, and we basically got together. Uh, 4 years ago, this was 2016, when we decided that something needed to happen, right? So we did like a small documentary screening, like in a friend's office space, and like 35 people showed up to watch a film for free. And we thought that this is not something that we can't, like, it's not something that can't be done. So we started to do that. Many times, we would just halt our operations completely because there was so much work, and I mean, just making sure that our schedules didn't clash, making sure that we could put up a screening event was always difficult with zero resources. But it's only been, I think, 1 year since we got like like really small amounts of funding, but we got some money. But I would say that I think between 2016 to 2019 we have been basically a cashless organization, and we have only worked on the basis of, what's called like the gift economy, where they weren't even like gifts. I think it was just like kindness economy, where someone would open up their space for us, someone would make sure that there was chai at a screening, and someone would give us their film for free without a screening fee. And we thought that initially, I think like one of the biggest goals was that like we started off with two big goals. One was to basically make sure that we could just show more documentaries and people would come and watch documentaries, because people who, like you said, I mean, your case with you going to South Korea and being able to watch a Pakistani documentary, we didn't want one of, like, like more of those incidents happening. And number two, we really started to feel, and we still continue to feel, and I feel like DAP needs to do more work on that front, but I think it'll come slowly and gradually. We really want to have a platform where we can bring people from all sectors of the documentary filmmaking world together, like within the Pakistani sort of set of people. For example, like, and I feel like you must have also experienced this, like as soon as it comes to, finding a good editor, like if your top 2 or 3 editors are busy, you won't really know who to go to. And the reason for that is that all freelancers work in silos, and most freelancers work with the same freelancers time and again. That if 3 of my best editors or my favorite editors are busy, I wouldn't know who to go to. I wouldn't know who to go to if I wanted a shoot where I needed a woman sound recordist. I wouldn't know who that person would be. So, or like, I wouldn't know that if someone was going to Khairpur or Sakhar, who is a good local driver who gets the documentary medium, is ready to put in extra hours and be compensated for it, in a fair way, but is ready to put in the extra hours, or knows the value of reaching a point, reaching a location before golden light begins, like before golden hour begins. Because when you work with even drivers, who have worked with the media, they know that, like the 1 hour before Maghrib Azan or Namaz is really important, because that's when these guys go crazy, and like the DP is just like, I want to shoot this, I want to shoot this because the light is beautiful, right?
Yeah.
So we want to make a database of all of those people who make our films, or like the process of producing our films easier and better and efficient. Because at this point it's the same thing, right? I mean, you talk to a woman documentary filmmaker, if she's going alone to some place that she has never been to, honestly, like, I mean, you just don't need a good DP and a good this and a good that. If it's a one person shoot, if it's just you doing all the hustle, you doing the sound and the shooting and the producing, then really, like, the only person you need is a driver. But then that driver needs to be a really reliable man, because he's a man, you're a woman, you're alone in a city. That person really needs to be able to take care of you, and you need to be able to take care of them. So for that, we really need to have like a database of all the different kinds of people. And not just creating a database is enough, then you need to have like more events where more of these people can come together, they can network, they can get to know each other better. And potentially everyone can ask for better rates. Like, like if you're getting a driver from a certain city, it doesn't mean that you can exploit them and pay them crap rates. Then like you kind of do the capacity building of everyone, an interpreter, a translator, a transcriber. How many times have all of us struggled with finding a good transcriber who is not just speedy but can actually accurately translate words, right? Transcription is not easy work. It's taken very non-seriously, but it's really like, it's like it's really God's work, because you're doing two things. You're not just writing down things that people have said, but you're translating it. So you really need someone who's good at two languages, not just one. You need someone whose Urdu is good and whose English is good, and then if you're making it in another language, then their Pashto needs to be great as well. So I feel like we are trying to, like, we're aiming. We haven't started to work a lot in that on that sector per se, like on building a database, but we're really wanting to sort of branch out into that very soon. We really need to Like we're really working to basically create a system where more people know each other and more people get their due share in terms of credit and in terms of money when a documentary is being made. Um,
And very recently, you guys signed a deal with the Berlinale. If you can shed a little light on that,
yeah,
and
so
how that
basically this
helped.
is a
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a grant that basically, Anam went to Berlinale. Anam had applied to this new program, this new sort of grant that had just come up earlier this year, and it's called Mastercard Footprints, basically. And this is about like this grant, like you can only apply for this grant if you've been an alum of Berlinale Talents or some program of Berlinale. But obviously, because Berlinale I think is now, I think, either like 70 years old or almost 70 years old. So that means that anyone from all of these years could apply
Mm,
to the grant, right? And I think a lot of people did apply. And Anam basically took DAP's idea and like tried to like basically like requested for funding, like pitched for DAP to get money so that we could do capacity building and training of emerging documentary filmmakers in Pakistan. So we pitched our idea in a way that we pitched our idea for Dog Balochistan, which is going to be our upcoming training program. We wanted to basically train around 10 to 12 Balochistani documentary filmmakers, so that their technicality and their like form and content could improve, and they could tell local stories from Balochistan, because obviously it happens to be an area which is doesn't make it to the news that much. We don't really know what goes down in that province. So we thought that it was like a beautiful concept to train people who have lesser training opportunities, have immense talent, while we have traveled to places like Quetta. As DAP, we have found out that, like, one of the biggest sort of festivals that we could have across in any city of Pakistan was in Quetta, where like 100 plus people came at 11 a.m. and did not leave until 7 p.m. until the last film played, and that
wow.
included 10-year-olds who were sitting in the front row watching all documentaries. And I was worried about them, that how can they not be bored, and
Mm,
so pretty amazing surprises also. So basically, DAP eventually ended up winning the grant. Like the only other two countries that won grants for other projects were Peru and South Africa. So essentially, like Pakistan, like DAP happens to be like the only Pakistani and only like the only Asian, sort of organization that ended up winning this grant. It's a very small grant, actually. It's not huge at all, but we are just trying to make the best of it. We really want to make sure that when we finish this workshop, that which is going to span over a period of 6 months, we really want to see like a lot of good films coming out of it. Like the like the purpose is to take from idea to final film stage, which is going to be, I think, a challenge also. But we're really looking forward to this. I think.
well, good luck with that. That seems like some really good stories coming out from there.
Hopefully, I'm really hoping so.
So, can you talk a little bit about your process? Because I know that you're a one-man band, well, one-woman band rather. Uh, because you not only produce, but you obviously direct it, you shoot it, you take care of the sound. I'm not sure if you edit as well or you have someone do that for you, but I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure that you do everything,
I
right?
don't edit at all now. I
Okay.
really like I run away from editing, which is not something that I'm proud of. But I feel like, I mean, I think I've lost that. I think the more I've started to shoot, the less I want to edit now.
As a cinematographer, I completely feel your pain and I agree with you because I don't like editing either. I'll shoot it
Yeah.
and I'll give it to someone else, but
Yeah.
so I
And
completely understand
I
what you feel.
don't want to see what I've shot. It's like,
Exactly.
deal with my mistakes and
Yeah.
inadequacies now. Work it.
Yeah. Yeah. I just want to move on to the next thing. Yeah. But
Absolutely.
can you talk a little bit about your process? So like pick a documentary which you're really proud of, something, even if it's small, whatever, and just run us through the
Mhm.
process and how that has, how your perspective changed through that process, like from the start to the end.
Right. So I think let's talk about Lavaris, which is like
Yes.
I mean it's actually not that new of a documentary. It came out
Mm,
last year, 2019, but just won an award this year. So I think people finally watched it now, even though it's been online for a year.
mm,
So we it ended up being acquired by Vice. At the time that we wanted to do it, we had no idea where this film would go. My colleagues had just won, like my director Owen had basically applied for like a screenwriting grant, and I think he had gotten enough money so that he could come, with a camera to Pakistan. And so this was a film that I produced, right? And as producer, basically, I feel like the first person, like with me, like whenever I've produced a film, that's when I've been attached to it from day one of research, right? So, and like for Lavares, obviously, like I started to make the rounds of the ED offices. It's a film that deals with unidentified bodies that are found on the streets of Karachi, and how the ED workers and ED um, service basically takes care of these people, picks them up, like arranges for their funeral, etc., arranges for their burial, and then um, gives them honor, gives these dead people honor, which they probably never had, like in a large period of their lives. And so basically for this film, like production began in the way that I had to first go to the ED centers. I started to sort of pre-interview a lot of people. I think finding, as we all know, but I think there's no harm in reinforcing this point again and again, that finding um, great characters for your films is very, very, very important. Like you can't stress it enough. My electricity has gone again, but I feel like we could continue
mm.
without it.
Yeah,
Very
I think
dramatic,
it's
very dramatic lighting.
it's okay, it's okay. But again, that just highlights one of the points of working in Pakistan, where things
Yeah,
just like this. I've been
just
in
like
shoots where
this
you
has
know.
happened. Yeah, this has happened in the middle of like some godforsaken, like serious interview, and you're just like, wow, like my lights are not working, which is why it becomes very convenient for me to work as a one person band, because sometimes it's so great to be working with lesser equipment, with no fancy lights, because that this will happen every day of our lives anyway. So you just go, you make a nice frame, use daylight, use natural light, and you just you know make it happen basically,
Mm,
as we are happening, trying to make it happen right now. But
yeah.
with Lavares, coming back to that, you do a lot of pre-interviews. You and not just pre-interviews because you want to have a great character on your film or
Mm,
characters in your film. Pre-interview is also, it's a two-way process. Like it's almost like people, like the people who you were interviewing are also judging you. They're also like basically they're sussing you out about what kind of a person you are and whether they should be in your film as well or not, right? I mean, we can't exercise this privilege that just because we are filmmakers we can really go anywhere. It's a gradual sort of symbiotic process where both parties are trying to see if it's even good to sort of work with this person. So in that space, obviously, like I was the only one who sort of went in, who did all the research, finding out like the best characters, figuring it out, and then sort of uh, and then you start the shooting, right? And so for this film I wasn't filming, but otherwise, you obviously would make a shoot plan, you would try to figure out what the style of the film is. In this film, this was a little lesser of my concern because the director was DPing, so I was kind of looking more at the content of the film and less on the form of the film, because it was somehow like not my headache like this time. But otherwise, finding the best characters, and then obviously like figuring out like what are the different things that need to be filmed, making sure that you don't see a lot of locations on the day of the shoot, but trying to check out all locations early on. And obviously documentary locations aren't fancy, like there's not like that much recce that can be done. You're not really trying to go find out places where you can put your HMI lights. It's just like you just want to see how congested the place is, what the dynamics of the place are. Is it a very crowded place? Would it look bad filming in front of everyone, especially if you're trying to film dead people, and so
mm,
the families are coming up to sort of reclaim the bodies, etc. So you kind of see the environment, you look, you hear, you feel, you observe, and then the shoot begins, and that's when the producer comes in to basically make a lot of schedules, trying to fit in as many things into a day of shoot as you can, because as I mean, shooting is an expensive thing. You have to hire a driver, you have to pay for meals. There's like a lot of work, so you can't really be complacent about that. Oh yeah, yeah, we'll see. Like
Mm.
Dekenge or we'll see doesn't work. You really have to be a pro, and you need to figure out what you're going to be doing from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. you know so that uh, and then basically then you take it from a day-to-day situation. There are days, like in my process, I think there's a lot of planning, and then there comes a day where all your plans go and fail, basically, right? Because you would have planned three different things in a day, but then things are not working at the pace that you imagined they would be. Someone would get stuck somewhere. One of your characters might have some emergency at work, at family, like with family, they may not show up, be able to come to a shoot. Um, and that's the time where I think, where, like, whether you're a DP or whether you're director, producer, field producer, anyone, like, you have to be very flexible. You have to plan on the spot about what else can you do if something is not working out at 3 p.m. You immediately have to figure out what do you do between 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. before the sun sets. You can't go home, like, that's not on. you know um, you can always go home late, but like, going home early is I mean, you almost feel like that you've sinned if you do that, right? You feel like something's not wrong,
Mm.
something's not right. So basically, a lot of, like, planning on the spot. And then, sometimes everything's working fine, sometimes you're in the mood to work, sometimes logistically things are possible, but sometimes you would just see that your character is a bit exhausted or tired, or has given you a really long interview, and a really, like, emotional one at that, but then they don't want you to film them, like, in some verite sequence the very same day. They would get tired, or they might be very wary of the camera now after revealing so much. So sometimes your character might just say to you that, like, can we do, like, the remaining stuff tomorrow, because I really don't feel like it. And that is a point where, like, that is a point where you have to be smart, but you also have to be empathetic, but you also have to be efficient about it. So sometimes you might just completely listen to them. Sometimes, if you know that, it's only 2 more days to the shoot left and there's so much else to film, sometimes you try to negotiate. But then, even when you're negotiating, you have to negotiate in a kind way. Like, you can't be like this insensitive prick about it. So I
Mm.
feel like there's a lot of conversations and a lot of mood management that happens. uh, you don't have to do a lot of that when you're working alone. Like, at least you don't have to manage your team's mood. Like, the only thing that you're managing is your own individual person's mood and the character's mood. But with a one person band, obviously, I mean, I think it gets difficult because you have to be the eyes, ears, everything on the field, and you can only be in so many places at one,
Mm.
in one instance.
True.
And I think, like, if it's a lot of verite footage, which I enjoy shooting, actually, I enjoy shooting. I'm more comfortable shooting verite than I'm shooting in, like, doing, like, when it comes to more, like, subjective, more stylistic filmmaking. That's where I enjoy being a producer or a director. But when it's verite, I really enjoy, like, the sort of the run and gun style of it. But even with that, sometimes you wish that you had like a trained sound person with you, if you could afford one sometimes, because then at least, you just focus on the visuals, and you don't have to worry about, whether, how close or how far your cameras should be, like, from your character, because you also need to get great audio from them. So I think it really switches from story to story and from team to team. There are teams with big crews where there's very little management to do, because everyone's a pro. Everyone has worked with each other for so long that there's not a lot of directions to give. And then there's smaller teams where, you're trying to create a bond with a new person, and it's a lot of hand holding, a lot of training, and all of that. So I think, like, that's what the process is usually. A lot of planning in advance, but then a lot of willingness to let go of your plan if things are not happening according to what you wish for. But still, making sure that by the end of a 10-day shoot or a 3-day shoot or a 17-day shoot, you have everything that you wrote on the list. Like, you can't compromise on what you
Yeah.
got, because we, as is, like, also, like, we never have the money to go back to a place. We never have the money or the funds to fly back to another
Yeah.
place, or to have the luxury to hire someone in our absence and ask them to shoot something. You have to follow a style, you have to follow certain rules. So you can't, like, you have to be a control freak, I think.
Hmm.
And make sure that everything gets done, and then you come back and then you sit on the edit, and still your editor will tell you the things that you've missed, in a very polite, calm way
Hmm.
usually. Like, I wish there was also these kinds of shots. Like, sure.
Yeah. Well, I know which editor you're talking about as well. I hope he's okay.
No, he should be fine. He knows what I feel about him.
No, he's a great guy.
Oh,
We won't take his
oh,
name though.
oh yeah.
But I know that again, like we were talking about you being a teacher as well, and your students. Obviously, we've had a conversation about that as well. How has tell us where you're teaching and how what you're teaching and how that has sort of transformed you, if it has, as a documentary filmmaker.
Right. I mean, what I teach usually is I teach two different kinds of courses. So one is a spring course, one is a fall course, and I kind of have been repeating those
Hmm.
frequently, and I really enjoy repeating them actually, because there's always some new stuff to add every year. One is a course about covering ethnicity in Karachi. So basically, this is a journalism course. It's got very little to do with video, let alone documentary filmmaking. This is a through and through journalism course with a lot of focus on print journalism and then some on photography. And what we do is basically study we study Pakistan's ethnic landscape, and how it plays out in Pakistan's politics, in Pakistan's economy, in Pakistan's sort of distribution of wealth, etc. But then students, like in the field, what they need to do is that they need to choose a particular ethnic community in Karachi. And an ethnic community here means a community that speaks a certain language, basically, right? So you would go and choose an ethnic community, and then you would report on that ethnic community throughout the semester. So you will do, like, you will start out with the cuter, easier stuff. You will do a food story, you will probably do a music story, you will try to explore what that community's literature or the poetry scene is like, etc., if there is one. And then you get to the more serious stuff about what does this community feel about political representation, what are some gender related issues, what are the civic issues that this community faces. And when I say community, like, because Karachi is divided in such a way that most ethnic communities um, often have some mohalla or some neighborhood that is sort of allocated, like, like for them. So if X community lives there or lives in 3 different colonies in Karachi, you will just go and pick one, and you will keep going back to that particular neighborhood of that particular ethnicity again and again. That is a hugely transformative course, I think, for my students and for myself as well, because my students learn a lot about ethnic diversity, which everyone is very conveniently, ignorant sort of towards in Pakistan. People think it's really not like people think, I think, that we are really not that diverse, or people, I think, often don't know how diverse Karachi is. It's one of the most important sort of
Hmm.
cities in the world. It's quite a riot, basically, right? And
And
I
it's
think,
quite
like, my
big.
students just have,
You
it's
can you
huge. Like, it
Yeah.
doesn't even, yeah, it doesn't even rain uniformly in the city,
Hmm.
right? Now, like, it rains in one neighborhood and doesn't rain in the other one, right?
Exactly.
So so I think my students, like, just get to know Karachi a bit more. I keep learning a lot more about Karachi through them, honestly, because every year there's always some stories, 3 stories out of 15 that will just surprise you, and you'll be like, wow, I did not know this place existed, or this phenomena was happening, or this event happens everywhere. So it's an eye-opener for me, and obviously it's an eye-opener for my students as well. And then the other course that I teach, it's called Let's Get Talking, and Let's Get Talking is all about taking interviews, right? So I would give some very vague prompt to students, like interview someone who you are a fan of, or interview someone who you disagree with, and then you need to go and interview them. So I mean, obviously this semester got affected by the pandemic, so we did either print or we did audio. Like as soon as we went, online, we got rid of the print stuff, and we started to do a lot of phone conversations with people. Like students interview people on the phone and made podcasts out of it. And that is also like, that is, I think those interviews are quite an exercise in empathy and in listening, because if you give someone a prompt that, go and go interview someone who you disagree with, like, if you're going to someone with the notion that you disagree with them, I think there will be a lot of learning and unlearning throughout the span of the interview, because you will end up getting to learn not just a lot about the other person, but also about yourself. That, wow, I walked into this room thinking that I'm just going to like not like this person at all, but then you kind of are going with your biases and you're presenting them as is, and you're saying that, yeah, I kind of dislike you, I think, but like I want to be able to
Hmm.
like you, by the end
Yeah.
of this conversation. So it's a pretty, I feel like it's pretty interesting. I think with the ethnicity course, there's a lot of like hardcore journalism. You do a quick story, you move on, even though you're moving on within the same neighborhood. And with Let's Get Talking, I think it's just like more you go back to the same person again and again, for like a 3,000 word piece, for example. So I think it becomes more
Yeah.
one-on-one. And I feel like I have been massively um, like affected by teaching in a good way. And I feel like, I mean, while you get to know about a lot of people and about a lot of new stories that your students uncover, I think what you learn out of teaching is how to basically, it really helps me in my documentary work as well, because you really, like, there's some students who will complain about something. There will be some who will suffer in silence. They might be suffering, they might be in pain, they might not be able to bring their 100% to a class because something's happening in their personal lives. And initially I was unable to sort of notice that too much. But now, like, now it's just like this thing where you go into a class, and then after a few weeks you just know, right? I mean, you
Hmm.
know that something's not right. There is something happening here in the
Hmm.
background. Why is this person suddenly quiet? Why is this person suddenly so talkative? Like, what's happening?
Hmm.
So I feel like that really, it's like gauging like the temperature, being able to read a room. I feel like younger people are really amazing to work with. Like, just they're more sensitive, they're more empathetic. And even if they don't know how to exercise their empathy, I think their their knee-jerk reaction is often kindness, and they are better at trusting people, right? Which is something that we let go of as we enter our 30s and become resident cynics
Cynics.
of everything that
Yeah.
we do, right? So I feel like, yeah, so I feel like just like being around younger people is really good, because you just are reminded that, like, you can just put a pause on your cynicism for a while, and
Hmm.
just like try to find joy, and try to trust people, try to be kind and see what happens next. And I feel like young people are also, I think, as is, we are really generally, I think, as society, we are not very amazing or humane with our younger people. We often have the tendency to take them non-seriously. We have the tendency of not taking their work seriously. We often think they complain too much, etc., etc. So I feel like I've seen this with my students that, if you just like listen to them a little, like, I feel like they respond really well to kindness and empathy. Like, if you listen to them for 15 minutes, like, they will remember it so much more than someone who's double their age, like, who thinks that it's like kind of like they're right for you to
Hmm.
listen to them,
Yeah.
right? So so I feel like they're really receptive to like to empathy, to patience. They really appreciate it if you trust them. Sometimes they're about to make a deadline, and then act some real stuff happens in life, right? Like, electricity would go away. And
Yeah.
like, and they want to submit it by some midnight deadline and they can't. And like, it's really heartening to see that if you actually trust them for once, they will remember it. Like, they will, like, contrary to sort of popular belief, they will not exploit your trust in them. Which is something I feel like older people would do easily. Like, younger people are just like, no, 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 this person trusted me once. I'm not
Hmm.
going to use this excuse again. Like, this just happened once, and I'm now going to make sure that it doesn't happen again. So I really end up learning. I feel like I really end up learning a lot more, and I feel like I've really, like, become like a different teacher over the years. I used to be really, really um, I used to be like really strict, like empathetic sort of, but also very strict. And now
Hmm.
I'm just, like, now I want them to leave with a good set of, like, life values and a good set of journalistic values as they leave the semester. But I feel like, it's like worrying about their grade, or like, fighting for that one mark is
Hmm.
really, I mean, it doesn't really do anything to me anymore. Even though I used to be a nerd at school and I used to always fight for grades, but I try to now remind my students that it's actually not that important.
Hmm. Yeah. So, picking up on the journalistic value, you know, how, like, you've obviously your entire working life has been in Pakistan, so
Yeah.
how have you seen, over the years, the erosion of that journalistic value? Uh, how has that impinged on your documentary filmmaking, or as an independent documentary filmmaker? Because you
Right.
obviously don't have, I wouldn't say anyone backing you, but you don't have that sort of safety net.
Right. Right. I think over the years, like, Pakistan's mainstream journalism has, I think, taken a blow, not because journalists decided to be subpar, or they decided one day to do bad reporting or weak reporting. I feel like they were more like more structural sort of dysfunctions in the system as is, right? More censorship started to happen, more like, publishers, or like in the case of TV channels, channel owners started to have more of a say in editorial policy. There used to be a time when newspaper editors and the owner would have nothing to do with each other. Like, the editor, it was all the editor's command about what would be printed in the next day's paper. And those good days are kind of gone, right? I mean, now the owner also pushes the editorial policy. And media owners, I mean, generally are people with big money. A lot of them haven't come into the field to promote, like, journalistic values. They've come to promote their business, and to also have greater social capital and to gain more power. Because, as is, like, if you have a channel to your disposal and a newspaper to your disposal, you can really uh, uh, affect public opinion about something that you want it to be affected for. So I think when this started to happen, automatically journalists were not allowed to cover certain kind of stories. Journalists were allowed to cover certain kind of stories with only, like, through a certain lens only. And then news got started to get enmeshed with entertainment somehow, and like, news became more flashy and the volumes got higher, and the tickers and the flashy movements on screen became ever more so intense. And I feel like this was never something that your average guy who sits in the newsroom, like, he never asked for it. Like, it was just like the big boss told them that from now on we need to keep it more flashy. Maza nahi aa raha, like, do it like this. It's a bit weak. It's a bit, it's a bit too somber. And that's how things started to change. And then, when your style has changed and then your content has also changed, then obviously, like, it's almost like news has changed then, right? Um, Thankfully, that hasn't had like a huge impact on us, because we were anyway in this subcategory of always much ignored. I think the one thing which has affected us definitely is that up until even a decade ago, there used to be at least some solid documentary slot. Where, even if it was a weekly slot,
Hmm.
at several news channels, Pakistani news channels, there always used to be a documentary slot. And as is like they were not hiring, they were not buying documentaries that were going abroad, or they were not um, using independent documentaries. But the great thing was that they were making brilliant local in-house documentaries, right? And now that slot is also gone. So now if we go in as DAP and try to say that, all right, like you don't have to fund any documentary, you don't have to have your in-house sort of section, but what if you have like a 20-minute slot every weekend, let's say, and strike an agreement with us, we are going to provide you the documentaries. Like we will, you give them your airtime and we'll just provide you the films. The thing is that most channels wouldn't agree with it because no slot is empty right now and no one wants to use it for a documentary. And even if it's an empty slot, it's going to be some random Sunday 5 p.m. slot which no one watches. Like even the filmmaker themselves would probably forget to
Mm.
watch it, because your 7 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. slot is now filled with talk shows that everyone watches, and talk shows that everyone despises. Like all our dads, basically, all our respective dads watch that stuff, and every day they complain about it. Oh, like it's nothing, this is all lies, like these people don't know why they're screaming at each other, but like they're always watching it also because there's
Yeah.
nothing else to watch. So it's not like it's the people's fault. It's like some state sab somewhere decided that I'm going to make it like I'm going to make production cheap and entertaining. It's really easy to pull off a talk show. Many times, like the research quality is pretty subpar. You call in some people nowadays. You don't even have to call in people to the studio. You just place a camera or ask them to place a camera themselves. It's all filmed. It's just like he said, she said. Now we're going to go to a break. Now we're going to fight, etc. Like there's some really good quality talk shows, and then the others are really, you could miss a week of them and you wouldn't feel like you've missed out on the news of the day.
Mm.
So there's no empty slot to put documentaries on anymore. I feel like that is like a straight up like direct effect of the news media going a bit awry, and that effect has been felt by documentary filmmakers. But otherwise, I feel like this entire deterioration in the way they cover news has not affected us, because most documentary filmmakers in Pakistan do not come from a newsroom background. There's some people, but then you will mostly see people who either went to film school or documentary school, or like documentary journalism school, or they came into it without without like a degree in these fields. But I think many times like they came into documentary because they did not want to get into daily news, which is why I think those two crowds have always been very different. Although, like, when you want to know about the depths of an issue, like as a documentary filmmaker as well, I always call my print or my TV journalist friends, because because they're covering stuff on a daily basis, they know so much more about it, rather than me, who will first start with googling something and then will figure out who the relevant people in the story are, because we were really working at our own pace, right? But these guys are really working on such a rapid pace that they're on top of a story. So like oftentimes my first source of information about an issue that I'm about to explore will still be a local journalist. But the sad thing is that local journalist doesn't ever get the opportunity to cover that issue in that much detail, because of different issues, and I end up using that information to tell a more detailed story in my documentary.
Hmm. So, coming back to with the students, have you, because obviously you're associated with DAP, have you been able to identify any new documentary filmmakers where you look back and say, oh, that one reminds me of where I was, and I think they'll be able to tell the important stories.
Yeah, and not all of them have been my direct students. I think I do a lot of training workshops. We've done some with DAP, and I've done many like as an independent sort of trainer. And I think, yeah, every few months, you meet some girl, some boy who, like, there's just something about them, about the way that they're thinking about an idea, about the way they're interacting with a potential character, etc., like it reminds me of myself also, but it also reminds me of, like, it's very cliched about how much talent there is in Pakistan, but you
mm,
really, it hits you that with the right mentorship, like hundreds and hundreds of people could get to a better position, if you just held their hand at the right point.
mm,
So with DAP, and irrespective of whether the DAP is happening or not, like I really make it a point to at least try to give some guidance, even if it's one phone call, like in the like in a year or something, or like in my entire life. I really do try to keep in touch with the ones, especially that show interest, that are intrigued, that are curious, and that just that the people who just, like, you can see their hunger to
mm,
learn new stuff. And I really, like, I try to, and I think more and more, like, as DAP, we're trying to just like create more opportunities for them, whether it's shadowing someone, whether it's observing a pitching contest that's happening somewhere in the world, because everything's happening online these days. So I
mm.
think we really want to make more people, like, we really want to help more people, like, get their foot in the door when it comes to documentary. It's
Yeah,
really needed, like, it's um, like, the the thing also, I think the difference that you must see, for example, like, you're in Canada right now, and you've also done film work in the US as well. I think one of the biggest differences in Pakistan and the West per se is that over here there's very little, like the culture of mentorship is almost non-existent. Like, often
I agree.
people don't understand that if you mentored people more, like, we would all rise up,
Mm,
because I think work has been so less, and it's such a small, like, competitive sort of field that everyone thinks that younger people, like, if you taught young people well, they would get ahead of you.
mm,
Like, what people don't realize is that when younger people go ahead, like, we all go together, because
yeah,
everyone benefits when, like, when the talent pool rises, when our production quality rises, we all
we all benefit.
rise,
Yeah.
unless you really don't want to rise, and unless you don't really want to improve your work quality. So I feel that has been missing, and we are, and like, really all of us benefited. I mean, I think, but like, like the next decade, I feel like, is crucial, because if we find like-minded people, if today's younger people get to what age I am at, and they keep the culture of mentorship alive, I think we are in a good place then.
Mm,
Slowly and gradually, we'll, like, Pakistan, whether it's documentary or whether it's commercial, slowly we'll make space, for ourselves. But I feel like, until we keep on being like clingy, and we try to keep this like as this incestuous field where no newcomer can really come in, then we're signing up for trouble. Then, like, the global economy will crush us. Basically, there's no one really waiting, for us to do
No,
that.
I completely agree with you. The lack of mentorship in Pakistan is it's abysmal, because and that happens throughout. It's not. I don't think it happens just in our field. I think just all over. There's this culture of
Yeah,
being scared of the new, and the change that
yeah,
will eventually come. It's just that you're trying to keep it at bay, in any way possible, and that doesn't do
exactly.
good for anyone, and doesn't do good for
Yeah,
the country either.
absolutely. And I think that's why, I mean, I think it's very easier to forget. It's very easy to forget. Like, when you do get like a certain amount of success, I think it becomes very easy to forget, like, how you reached where you've reached, right? Like, we have also, like, some of our elders have also literally like presented their shoulders to us for
Hmm.
us to step on them and to
Yeah,
rise up, right?
yeah.
It's not like what I have achieved is because of me, and
Hmm.
what my students will achieve is also because of me.
Hmm.
Like, everyone has done a personal level of hustle, and then we've all met like amazing people who have pushed us in the right direction. Sometimes just one meeting, and sometimes continuous conversations and a Q&A about, what do you want to do, why are you doing this, etc. So it's not like we have also achieved everything on our own, but
Exactly.
it's really very easy to forget it as soon as you get success. It's like, of course it was all because of me.
Mm.
And that, that switch should never happen. Like,
Mm.
that switch should never happen. I feel like there needs to be some humility workshops as well. I think.
Oh, yeah, completely agree. So, I mean, again, the avenue for documentary filmmaking in Pakistan. Like you said, I remember that at one point, Geo used to have a slot where documentary filmmakers used to come, and we had some really good wildlife documentaries coming on that.
Yeah.
And we actually have one or two who are consistently funded by WWF. And so, from what I've seen, and I could be completely wrong, there are either documentaries which are realist and they're based on what the ills of society are, and then you have wildlife because Pakistan is a beautiful country. Like, people probably haven't even seen the breadth of that beauty. It's so vast, but you only have these two. Why do you think there's nothing in between? Like, you look at documentaries from other countries, and there's a whole space in between that is not being filled. Is there any reason for that, and how do you think that could be tackled?
Right. I think, I mean, this, I will admit that this is a difficult question to answer. I think one of the reasons why we are not producing enough in between stuff is also because we are not watching a lot of that stuff. Right. I mean, I'm always surprised about how, like, something as basic as New York Times op docs, right, which are easily available online, everything's on YouTube, like, not a lot of young filmmakers have watched those films as well,
Mm,
even though they're super experimental, like, really quirky storytelling style. Sometimes like all rules of documentary filmmaking are being broken, yet it is like very much a doc, right? So I feel like we don't watch enough of that stuff, which is why when it comes to making a film of our own, we are also kind of psychologically tied down by the few kinds of doc films that we watch, and we kind of, I think, recreate those styles. Like, verite is gold. Verite will probably never die because there's nothing as exciting and beautiful and poignant as real life, right? But like, we don't even watch a lot of like solid verite work, right? A lot of the, like, when you think of when people are, when I say the word documentary, a lot of people in Pakistan would think either wildlife stuff like nature docs, or they would think like a voiceover plus like talking head slash
mm,
interview driven narrative with some b-roll plastered in between. That's because that is what we've usually seen, or like the last time someone actually tuned into BBC to watch like a good document, to watch a documentary, that's what they watched, or they watched some Discovery Channel or Nat Geo stuff. And so they think that this is where documentary begins, and like, this is the news side of it, this is the nature side of it, which is obviously, like, I mean, nothing could be farther from the truth, because documentary has moved like, like in just the past decade, like the styles have just, they're just mind blowing. Like, it's hard to keep up. Honestly, it's hard to keep up sometimes. So I feel like we don't watch a lot of in between stuff, because if we did watch it, we would see better documentaries. Now there are some competitions that happen where you see interesting stuff, where people would submit like a 3-minute film, and it would be really like a good combo of verite slash experimental stuff. So I feel like, I mean, some people out there might also be trying it, but not enough people are watching also like a diverse range of documentaries. And then when it comes to film school, documentary is always this ignored, as you said, like, stepchild basically, because you go to film school or art school in Pakistan, documentary is still a side thing because the focus is on making fiction. And And then you come to journalism school, like my former school, like mass communication department at KU. There's so much focus on newsy stuff that documentary still is kind of out of their spectrum as well, right? Because they're focusing on daily news, some features, not like feature length documentaries. And then you come to film school, the art kids basically, they're focusing more on fiction. So it's like no one really has like a documentary stream anywhere in Pakistan where you can. I mean, they probably one or two like colleges, but like otherwise, like you don't really study documentary in an undergrad program uh, for more than a course. Like the maximum, like if you study documentary, it's for one course that you must have taken one semester. That's the max, honestly. So
Hmm.
if you only get like 6 months of like doc training, um, at school, then how are you ever going to imagine like newer perspectives? And then also depends on who's teaching that course. If it is someone who has come from that usual background that a documentary is either nature documentary or voiceover, talking heads and b-roll, then that teacher is also going to teach you the same typical styles, right? So the teacher also needs to be on top of their game, and even if they don't make a lot of documentaries, they should at least be very much aware of the documentary scenes. um, I remember, like, I think 3 years ago, I went to Berlinale, and they had this entire documentary fund about films that were the in between, and the way the person pitched it was, we try to not focus on documentaries, and we try to not focus on fiction. We try to focus on the in between, and those documentaries were stylistically like on some other plane altogether. So I feel like there's a long way to go, and we should be keeping an eye on what's happening, every year at film festivals. Obviously, I think there's also systemic sort of injustices when it comes to people living in South Asia or living in Pakistan. This was the first time where I could actually see a lot of documentaries online because South by Southwest went online.
Hmm.
ITFA put a lot of their films, from previous years online. Like, if the pandemic hadn't hit us, we would never be able to
Yeah.
watch these films because no one
True.
puts them online, right? So it's not like, and so we can't even blame
Hmm.
only the students that, oh, like, you guys aren't watching the right stuff, or the teachers, because 2020 film festivals, like, kind of, like, we kind of got lucky because we got to see a lot more films. But 2019, 2018, even I don't have access to
Hmm.
any of those films. uh, unless we get some films from outside of the country for DAP. That's when we get some access to screeners, right? So we're pretty, like, our hands are also tied, right? I mean, um, there are organizations that would put a documentary online, and then you go there, and then YouTube has sort of geo-blocked it, and the stuff is not available in Pakistan. You're just
Yeah.
like, wow, what do you think we are, like, a bunch of thieves who will just pick up
Hmm.
everything. So it's really, yeah. So it hurts also sometimes, that sometimes you want to access good documentaries and you can't. And like, it's not our fault. It's not the fault of the people, or the people, like, instructing students at film schools. So there are some systemic, like, injustices as well,
Hmm.
for sure. Like,
Yeah.
we can't ignore that. It's very lopsided. um, you know uh, hardly any funding comes to Pakistan when it comes to documentary. So it's so lopsided that, like, no wonder we only make news when we do win an award, because that's the only time we are receiving
Hmm.
recognition from the outside world, right? So how are we going to, like, how can we even sometimes, like, blame people when they think that any documentary that goes out of Pakistan gets an award, because they really, like, because that's what the news tells them, right? Like, they really don't see all the strugglers out here, like, you, me, and all of our students, and some of our friends, like,
Hmm.
they don't really see, like, the struggle that goes into the documentaries that
Yeah.
don't make it big. They're decent films, but they don't win a fancy award.
Hmm.
So people usually get to know about the films that end up winning something only.
And sometimes, the struggle is not just about not making the movie. Sometimes the struggle is with the people who are in the movie themselves, the characters. Like, I remember shooting with Amar Aziz, and
Mhm.
again, the subject was um, the Baldia factory fire,
Right.
and the court case that was happening in Germany, and the people. So I went, I shot some stuff for them, and I went repeatedly a couple of times when they were holding protests and
Hmm.
stuff like that. It came close to them, being able to get a ruling in their favor from a court in Germany. And then there was
Hmm.
something else in, suddenly everything went the other way completely. And so what they were building up to be something, that was it's supposed to be good news for the citizens of Baltia, for those unfortunate
Hmm.
people, for those unfortunate families. you know the I still don't know if the doc is completely, if it's completed, but the characters,
Hmm.
the journey that they went through, like that journey hasn't met a fruitful end. So as a filmmaker as well, you're sitting back
Right.
and thinking, what, it's the sadness on the part of the character sort of overwhelms you as
Taking
well, because
forever almost.
it so even for me, who was just connected to the thing for just a short while, again, like you said, it takes so long to make
Yeah.
those docs. I think this was like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it you get connected to the characters in
And
one
then
way, and
sometimes,
yeah, so you get connected to the characters, and it's sort of difficult to leave that behind. Also, sometimes the project might be over, but that connection is still there.
yeah. The connection is still there, definitely. The connection is many times still there, definitely. You can't like cut off people from your life just like that.
I mean, you can
Um,
try, but yeah.
and then sometimes, yeah, I mean, yeah, like, do you really want to,
Mm,
also? And then, like, you have really like taken up space at someone's home for so long. Like, do you really like, like, will you just like walk away just because your film is done?
mm,
That also says a lot about, like, yeah, we like a team's character, I think.
mhm,
But also, and then I think the major problem with being is also that many times people could be making like a smaller scale film, maybe something that can be completed like in 7 months, 8 months, doesn't take maybe three years or something. But then just this pain of not knowing what to do with your film after you've shot it, you might have edited as well. Where does your 20-minute film go?
mm,
It is not that sort of it doesn't fit like those standards of competition that it could end up at a streaming platform, let's say. But it's not a bad film. Where is it going to go? Fine, you can make it to the second tier film festivals, but then it's not like all platforms get like the best stuff, right? I mean, there is stuff where like your A minus films should also go, right? Where are those platforms? People don't know here. It's very difficult, it's very difficult to sort of access those entire um, like that entire landscape about what to do with a film that you created with very little money, and you've sent it to some film festivals, it's gotten screened, maybe you got a screening fee, maybe you sent it to all the free film festivals, that's fine. But then after that, what do you put it on YouTube? Do you try to do a community screening? Like, even if you made it just for the sake of the interest that you have in that subject, and you really had not made it to earn like some licensing fee, what do you do with that film? Because if you put it online, still not many people would watch it if you're not a known filmmaker,
mm,
because how much noise can you make on social media? I feel like those platforms are also missing. And um and like, I feel like those films also need to end up somewhere, whether it's in community screenings, whether it's some slightly known platforms offshoot where local Pakistani A minus films could go, because those are not pathetic films. Those are pretty nice films, or someone's first time film, like a nice 12-minute film. So I think there needs to be a conversation about those films as well, about where are those films going to end up. The stories, like, it's very easy sometimes to say that, oh, if you're passionate about telling a story, go pick up the camera and do it,
mm,
because honestly, a lot of kids are doing that anyway. A lot of boys and girls in different cities of Pakistan, are already doing it. But then at one point they're just like, why am I doing this? I should rather find some other job because I'm just using up a lot of resources on this, and I don't even know where this film is going to end. And when it comes to film festivals, everyone is very choosy. Everyone wants to show the best films, but then like, who's going to watch these films that have already been made on some very interesting subjects as well?
So, have you been able to identify any of these platforms that you're talking about, like a place, not Pakistan, but just anywhere, where they can be?
Yeah, not yet, honestly, to be honest, not yet. Because even when it comes to our own documentary film festival, Chalta Firta Festival, or if you talk about yours, I'm pretty sure you're going through a rigorous process of screening films,
Mm,
and you would not want a film that is not 100% engaging, right?
mm,
But like there's some films that you watch and you're just like, I wish this film went somewhere, like,
mm, yeah.
also like then the dual standard of like not choosing something for your own film festival but then wishing that it did end up somewhere else, like that's also very like a weird question to be asking. But I think those films should probably, I don't know how they can be viewed like by masses, by large numbers of people, but I think those films should have like a criteria that are maybe specifically about the kind of theme or the kind of subject that the film is made on. um, so if you have like a film on the environment, then maybe some film festival that tackles sort of climate change
Yeah.
or like life underwater or those kind of things. I think that's where your film can stand out. But then again, like I mean, the question is like, how can your film be seen by more Pakistanis if it's not a famous film? If it'll never be like a big famous film, but it's something that is a decent piece of film. Where do those people end? I think maybe then there is some value in actually creating a database where people are just more connected. So at least like you can at least share it with the people in the field so that they know that all right, this person has potential. They've shot like a pretty decent film all on their own without any resources. If given the right resources, they could excel. So maybe there is some value in even not worrying maybe about taking it to millions of people, but to at least take it to like the 500 people that are associated with documentary, in the entire country, so that at least your name is out there.
Mm.
People know that this is someone who should sort of watch out for because they could, do some interesting disruption in the future.
So, this is probably going to be the most difficult question that I'm going to ask you, but we all have to pay bills. We all have to eat food. In terms of the financials, like I've never understood, because I don't come from that background of a documentary filmmaker. What are the financials, and what are they? How are you? As a filmmaker, as an independent documentary filmmaker, how are you sort of engage, trying to come to terms with those? How does it, like, for most documentary filmmakers? How is it being met? Because there are no avenues
I
to
think
sell
if
your
you're a
movies or
freelance,
whatever.
yeah, yeah, I think if you're a freelance documentary filmmaker, you need to be creative. Like you can't just focus on your passion projects or your very journalistic projects to help run the kitchen. You have to do a lot of development sector work. You have to be ready to produce films that you may not have directed ever, on issues that you might have covered for too long. For example, like by now I've worked on at least two honor killing stories, and I could have actually done more also. But like it's a subject that I've done enough now. I would probably not want to make a film of my own on that subject. But if tomorrow, some producer with decent amount of money being offered to me, came to me and or like some director basically came to me and said that I should be their producer, I would probably do it because I need that money. I need that per day freelance rate to sustain myself. It's not a film of my choice, but it's also not a cause that I don't believe in, right? I mean, I do believe that one needs to raise, one should raise as much noise about honor killings. It's just that maybe it should be someone else. But if the work comes to me, I'll take it because I need to make those films as well. And then you teach and then you train. So I mean, it really depends on how diverse you are. There's some documentary filmmakers who are also great illustrators or who are great animators, and they do their bread and butter from these other technical sides of sort of film stuff, video stuff, and then they do documentary on the side. So there's all kinds of people doing different kinds of things. You can't really I don't think, I mean, I don't know how people would do it. Like, I don't think you can only survive on the basis of making one feature length film every 3 years. Like, I don't know how that would happen.
Mm.
Um, but if you do make a film, I mean, like, how you financially sustain yourself is when you get like a broadcasting license from other countries, right? If your film is being sort of acquired by some organization or entity in the US or in the UK or in Europe, I think those are the relatively decent chunks of money that you get. But then oftentimes, I will tell you, Vivian, that you have spent so much money out of your own pocket on completing that film that oftentimes that licensing fee that you get becomes like your compensation for all the expenses that you've already incurred.
Mm.
It's not really it's not really something that you will sit like, that's going to sit in your bank for a while. Like, I remember I was talking to a good friend of mine, and when he finished his first one, he was just like, I've ended up becoming financially poorer than what I was, but emotionally much richer than what I was
Mm.
after finishing like my debut sort of directorial, like my directorial debut. So that's also, what happens. Um, Basically, it's really like, I think a lot of people are really trying to like uh, funnel money into their passion projects by working on things, other projects, other sectors that they're also very deeply interested in, but maybe they would do less of that if they were not sort of burdened by financial pressures.
Mm. So, does that, because you just spoke about how people aren't watching those kind of documentaries, so there's a gap in the middle. Does this also play a huge part that you can only work on certain, because you have to make money, you have to work on certain sorts of documentaries, because of the NGOs and different corporations or whatever? Uh, does that play a part as well in the whole
I
ignorance of
think, I
what
mean,
sort of documentaries can be made?
I don't think so, because I think the corporate sector or the development sector comes with their own sensibilities. They're really not looking for films that are going to be watched by millions. They're really looking for you to make a film that they can play in their board meeting or their next fundraising cycle, which happens, often in stores. I feel like we become more conscious of what kind of films to pitch for with our passion projects more than these bread and butter films, because um, the funding comes from somewhere else, right? The funding comes from outside of Pakistan, and there is like a lot of politics to the world of documentary as well, right? So when 9/11 happened, the next decade, like, for the next decade, a lot of films that got funded were related to the aftermath of 9/11, the war on terror, the refugee crisis, all these things. And then, and when Malala got shot in the head, like after that, I think for the next couple of years, Pakistan got so many commissions, like different documentary filmmakers got so many commissions of different documentaries of varying lengths from 10 minutes to like 40 minutes, all on girls' education, right?
Hmm.
So it's not like films only happen on the basis of what happens in Pakistan. But, I mean, yeah, it's true. Um, I remember that after like this big sort of pool of films came to Pakistan related to girls' education or to polio. After that, around that time, like the Syrian refugee crisis started to basically grow a lot and intensified, right? And as soon as that intensified, it was pretty interesting to observe that it's almost like all the films and the funding that used to come to this region automatically got shifted, and all funding like that was earlier supposed to be considered by us as ours shifted towards Middle East. A lot of films started to come out of Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Greece, because a lot of people were going there as refugees. So suddenly the focus shifted, right? And it is definitely like a great north-south divide, basically, right? I mean, within the US or like within North America now, uh, like more like a lot of films there get funded, and then it's almost like a smaller percentage of international films get remained to be funded. And then it's it really depends on the mood in the world at that point, whether the film from Syria would get funded, or the film from India would get funded, or the film from Afghanistan or Pakistan would get funded. So I feel like there is a lot of politics. I've been told by different friends who are making films on certain subjects that the Western world can never sort of associate Pakistan with, right? So like that stuff is happening in Pakistan. People are making narrative films on it, but like your American or Canadian funder is just like, no, but I don't think this is what Americans want to see about Pakistan. And that's such a blatant statement, but it also shows about how the politics of documentary funding works. Because if they still want films on militancy and terrorism and girls' education, then how will we ever make some film on some quirky
Hmm.
thing? So that way,
Yeah.
that tying back to your very like your much older point about why we end up making similar kinds of films is also because similar kinds of films get funded. I don't know if like the biker pindi boys of Pakistan who do all of these and these stunts. I don't know if like I'm pretty sure like a lot of Americans are interested in watching a 30-minute film on that, but I don't know how many rich donors are willing to fund that film, because that's not what they want to see about Pakistan. Usually that's not what they that doesn't coincide with their idea of Pakistan. It's like men being reckless and kind of having fun, but kind of putting themselves in danger.
Hmm.
I don't know if they're signing up for that. I'm pretty sure like so many people would be fascinated by the subject, but the gatekeepers of the documentary industry also need to rethink about um, uh, their way of working. And then more so, like I would also want to comment like whatever's happening in the US since like for the past 4 or 5 years since Trump became president. So much of documentary funding just got shifted back to the US. It's almost like the little unset quota that international films
Hmm.
had, all of that work, all of that money has also gone to the US, because there's more films on race, there's more films on ethnicity, on being pro life or pro choice, because all of these issues were debate topics in the US, but they were not as divisive as they've become now. So a lot of North American funders are choosing to fund films from US, and kind of challenge the American, like the new American power structure. So it's almost like, yeah, they're making films about their own issues and about the Muslim ban, etc., etc. But then that means lesser films for our part of the world. Uh,
So, is there any way to, because I know that you have a few big grant commissions. I mean, the biggest I would say right now is IDFA. If I'm wrong, please correct me. But then you have Hot Talks, and you have a couple more that are the ones who are just sort of they
yeah,
have grant options.
it's
But is there
it's
anything
ISBA.
else that would
Yeah,
sort of satisfy our side of the world? Especially South Asia, not just Pakistan, but South Asia, because you have good stories in the rest. In India, in Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and then
yeah,
in the wider Asian region as well.
yeah. I think South Asia really needs to get its act together. I think there's so much like political drama, but then also like logistical barriers that happen. I feel like when it comes to fundraising or grant money, where is this thing going to be situated at? I feel like I think there used to be some really good documentary festivals in Nepal. I think in Kathmandu. Um, and it started to become like this place where at least South Asia's documentaries like got featured. But even with that, like they are able to like collect films, they are able to bring good filmmakers to a festival. But being able to give out grants, for example, it's very difficult work, because
Mm.
essentially that those big amounts of money is also going to come from somewhere else. That needs a lot of background work, that needs a lot of legwork. And people who have money don't want to sometimes give it to some South Asian country, like they want to be in control of the money that they spend. So they'll never give away, like $50,000 to some organization in Nepal or to DAP, in Pakistan, and say that, all right, like, DAP should, have a great jury, a strong one, a very well-rounded, fair jury, and they should be the ones commissioning these grants through our money. The thing with money and pesa is that whoever has it wants to make sure that they spend it in the way they think is right. So oftentimes the agency of being able to spend money is still not in our hands, in the brown person's hand. It's still like, very much controlled by the big foundations. Yeah, and so it's almost like, I mean, slightly, um, like slightly dismal, because like there is no immediate solution inside. I think there has to be a value in like collecting and gathering in South Asia, um, because you see, like, like the Middle East has, there are film festivals coming up, in Qatar and Saudi Arabia and all of these places, but like they're also very, uh, you know they want
Insular.
to play up their Arabness. If I
Hmm.
insular, yeah, definitely, and they want, they play up on their Arabness, but like South Asia is still like kind of sort of out of bounds for them,
Hmm. Yeah.
and yeah, so you'd
Yeah.
rather then go to like someone who's paying you in dollars than someone who's not even sort of
I uh, I
acknowledging like
agree
your
with what you're saying,
existence.
because like even the stipulation on these different funds or whatever, like even in the Doha Film Fund, that there's stipulation about which countries can apply. I'm not sure where Pakistan stands right now with
I
that.
don't think it stands anywhere. Until
I
last year, there was
because
nothing
I
specific for
checked last year
Pakistan.
and there was nothing
Yeah, yeah,
on
same.
there for Pakistan, but they were obviously they were catering to the general Middle East region first,
Yeah,
Middle East and North Africa, so the MENA region. But there was nothing for Pakistan. I
absolutely.
don't know if there was anything for India, but I did.
Yeah.
I found out a little while back, a couple of months ago, that a friend of mine, they've gotten post production fund from there. They're from the wider South Asian region, and but I don't think that news has come out, so I'm not going to say which country. But there is this disparity, and also with workshops where you can go, and because of this whole political drama. Because I remember last year uh, there was a very famous producing mentorship program, Produire du Sud, that happens in France, but they were having it in Bombay as well, like a sister agency in Bombay, and they were doing that, and they were getting screenwriting mentors and producing mentors from sorry, producing mentors, not screenwriting, just producing mentors from France and from other countries as well to India, and generally everybody in the Asian region could apply except Pakistan. So the the engagement of different filmmakers, and being able to build that community gets severely restricted, and you don't know what's happening on that side. You don't know what they're talking about, or what their issues are, what their hot button issues are. It might be very different from Pakistan. Um
Exactly.
so you sort of left out in the cold. I feel that Pakistan generally is just left out in the cold, and they don't know what's happening. The filmmakers don't know what's happening. They don't know how to apply for these grants. They don't know who to approach, and what their next steps are going to be. So they sort of stop where they are. I don't know if
Yeah,
that's
absolutely. Yeah,
that's true.
absolutely. I think, yeah, and I feel like, I mean, sometimes I feel like, I think all of South Asia, I feel like all of South Asia is kind of um, orphaned sometimes,
Mm.
because like Bangladesh or India or Nepal like might have some, there's some action happening there, but still it's also not that cohesive. Like with India, I mean, the problem is that their commercial industry, Bollywood, is so huge that their documentary filmmakers feel like they're always overshadowed
mm,
and completely ignored because of the fact that the other industry is so successful. Why would they give attention to this one, right? With us, at least in Pakistan, it's almost like we're all in this together and everyone's struggling, right?
mm,
Whether it's fiction or doc filmmakers. In Bangladesh also, I see like potential. I see like some workshops happening, but then like it's not also like it's not only like that Pakistan is left in the cold, but also like I think Pakistan's um Pakistan's situation with every country in the region, it like kind of keeps changing every year. One
mm,
year we are friends with India and we're not talking to Bangladesh. The next year we want to talk to Bangladesh, but India is not giving us a visa.
yeah,
So the only two countries that are left basically are Sri Lanka and Nepal, where everyone kind of can take a flight and get stuff done. But I feel like still like the thing is that Pakistan and India have this great thing that like North India at least and a lot of Pakistan, it's hardly any language difference. Like the expression, the tonality, everything is the same. Like if we are to take our documentaries out of Pakistan, without subtitles, like the only other country in the world that it can go to has to be India,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And the same applies with Indian documentary filmmakers. But like, how many Indian films, like documentary films, do you have access to
mm,
sitting there? And how many Pakistani films do those guys have access to? Not much, zero maybe, or like one every 2 years. So that's also the problem, right? That I mean, and it's not like Pakistani artists or filmmakers don't see the potential in this. Like enough has been done, enough has been said, enough has been sung about it. You know, Pak India, if not friendship, like a working relationship at least.
mm,
But I mean, like you can't operate in a silo. Like you can't operate in a vacuum. Like if your systems are not allowing you to be friends, if your system is not allowing you to go to Bombay to attend a workshop because you're not getting a visa, then then till
mm,
when are you going to try? So then everyone becomes a bit more either inward looking or more west looking. Everyone wants money from the west because everyone kind of knows that we are all so much like distracted by our own stuff regularly that we may not be able to forge these longer term boundaries. Like you have to go and meet people. Like there needs to be an exchange, and that doesn't happen at all. So,
mm. So
and
try
that's
to
also like
finish.
a
Yeah.
yeah. So,
So
and
no,
that's
no,
also
go.
not a filmmaker's place to fix, right? I mean, we are
Mm,
not supposed to form like I'm a Pakistani filmmaker. I mean, I love Indian filmmakers. Like I didn't go to war with the country. I mean, anyway, for me to be able to make peace, I'm at peace anyway. Like it's the people in power who need to work it out and and make stuff happen. But like if it's not their stake, then we can only do much.
mm, true. Um, trying to finish off on a more uh, hopeful note. You you've been at it for a number of years. You obviously got into documentary filmmaking, for a couple of reasons. But over the years, has there been anyone that has inspired you? And are there any documentary films that you look back and say, that was like the turning point for me to really realize what I love and why I love documentaries, and that I wanted to sort of carry on with that tradition.
You're talking about any documentary, right? Not
Any
necessarily
documentary,
Pakistani.
yeah, doesn't have to be any Pakistani, doesn't have to be any documentary.
Right.
Let's say,
Uh-huh.
whatever.
Hmm. I think there've been few. I mean, I think I think one of my all-time favorite films is Iraq in Fragments by James Longley. I mean, I just love the way that man makes films. Basically, it's also like I think I mean, he's also like one of the rare few people who I mean, shoots stuff himself and directs it, but then the music is also done by him. So when you're reading the credits, you're just like, this is scary. I wish I would be like him.
Mm,
So there's that as well. So there's a lot of inspiration, but also a lot of awe. Like, okay, how is this
Mm.
happening? How can one person do all of this? But also like the way he interviews people, um, uh, the kind of things he's able to get from children in his films is really profound. It's kind of mind blowing, honestly. Hardly any, actually, no on camera interviews, like everything, just hearing the audio, and then you're seeing a lot of shots, like whether it's verite or whether it's, what we call sort of B roll, but it's just
Mm.
like some otherworldly stuff
That's
happening.
just the role that there is. You either watch it or you don't watch it.
Exactly. And then there's, I think one of the more recent, really amazing Indian documentaries was An Insignificant Man.
Mm.
This was, it's pretty good, like very solid. I feel like, um, reminds you about how amazing it is to have good access, how to maintain good access over a period of years with people who are in politics, who can really switch anytime, but to maintain that relationship, to to tell a very grassroots story about something
Mm.
that's mega big. Delhi and its politics is not something that you can take non-seriously, but to make something um, humane about it is pretty interesting. And then obviously, like some of the films that really shake you, and you're just like, like wow, are I really think like Joshua Oppenheimer is someone who's just like, like Guru Dev, basically. An act of killing is something that, I
Mm.
think we all go back to that film many times. um like I ask my students to watch it, and then I watch it once more. Like
So
it's
you just
pretty,
need
I mean,
another reason. So you put it
I
on
just
with your
like
students and
to
watch it.
watch it once more. Yeah. So I think those, and I think there have to be more. um I feel like a lot of like films that have come from China in the past year, like like Last Train Home. I remember watching it
Mm.
in a classroom actually in New York, and the filmmaker had come. It's like amazing, solid film, like beautiful visuals, but then also powerful, like verite moments. Wants to make you think about a place, about people. Like pretty solid film, I think. Yeah, I think that's a good film to sort of go back to also. Even though I think it came out in 2010, if I'm not wrong, but it's a pretty good film. It's like beautiful and like slow but amazing. Yeah, I mean, I think interesting films.
So what are the next steps forward for you, and how do you see, is there any light at the end of the tunnel for documentary filmmaking in Pakistan?
Absolutely. I mean, like we're in such darkness, or we've been in such darkness, metaphorically and
Metaphorical
literally
and
speaking,
literally.
that, I think the only way out of here is out of the tunnel, and out of the tunnel there is light for sure. I think it's a slow process. We can't give up. We should not give up, because as is, if you look at the past 10 years, um, even if you make the point of when Pakistan won its first Oscar in documentary, in 2012, look at that timeline. Things have only improved. Things have
Mm.
been slow. There's always dips and whatnot, but it has become better. It has not become worse. More people have come into documentary. More Pakistani documentaries have done better internationally. Most more smaller Pakistani documentaries have gone um, to the smaller film festivals. So more people are being seen. Equipment, obviously, equipment will probably always be slightly expensive, but more equipment has become more accessible to people. You see more younger people, working on smaller, more accessible equipment. So I feel like more documentaries are going to come. I think like what we need to crack the code of is, what do we do with all the films that we make? Like how do we ensure that a certain quality is maintained in the films that get made? I think that is a slow process that comes with practice, and that comes with watching a lot of films. I feel like the real question is, when we almost have a film ready, you know if we cannot depend on international broadcasters, where should this content go? Should this end up on some brand new documentary streaming platform online? should there be some slots again on the broadcast scenario? Like, how do we make sure that more people get to watch these documentaries without leaving like our documentary filmmakers completely poor and like under
Hmm.
resourced? You know, I think that is the real question
Okay.
to ask, because I feel like I really feel that, you know, I've been saying this often now. I feel like if we had like some solid local documentary platforms, whether they were online or however they would be, I think we would see more different kinds of documentaries coming up from Pakistan. You know, then we would see some fun stuff. Then we would see some quirky, some experimental films. It's just that people don't make them also because, you know, like they don't like for sure a broadcaster will never take that film, you know, like even an international broadcaster, because they follow their own sort of styles and rules. So I think it's one of those things as well.
Good. So, Haya, thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you. I've eaten up 2 hours and 10 minutes of your day,
Fine.
but I'm so glad we finally got to, see each other after quite a while and talk. Thank you for all the information that you've shared with us, and good luck with DAP, and good luck with everything that's coming your way in the future.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm
You're welcome.
also, I think the visual person in me was also very glad that we were wearing similar colors today.
Oh yeah, I know. I noticed that, but I didn't want to say anything.
I was like, I need to slide this into the conversation. We planned it. We came here as
Yeah,
good friends,
exactly.
and you know, like yeah, we just like did
Yeah.
it.
Hopefully, the next time we talk, it won't be, through the computer. It'll actually be, physical,
Hopefully.
where we also won't have to wear masks.
I know. I can't wait to like, you know, not wear them.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. But you take care of yourself, and you have a great, great night actually now.
Thank you. Thank you,
Bye.
Vivian.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
So, people, that was Haya Fatima Iqbal. It was amazing talking to her, and we'll have more masterclasses such like this, where we're talking to filmmakers, Pakistani filmmakers from around the world, where they'll be talking about specific topics and the way forward for independent filmmakers. And I'd urge you to watch this space for more masterclasses such as this, and to just like Kaya said, we need people to go and watch movies. We need them to watch quality content. Sorry about that. My stream just had a bit of an issue, but like I said, we need people to watch quality content, to recognize quality content, so that the people who are funding these stories, who are funding this content, can recognize and fund quality content. So more of that is produced. There's a wider array of content that's being produced, that is not just for one sort of storytelling, but all sorts, so that we see different viewpoints and we see different perspectives, and really that's how we grow as individuals, as human beings. So to finish this off, I would ask you all to be open to more stories, more quality stories, and Gandhara Independent Film Festival supports that, and that's why we built this festival. That's why we're building a platform for different storytellers to be able to have the experience of putting their work in being seen by a global community. And let's just keep at it. Uh, Thank you for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed the session. And we'll have more sessions such as this. Take care. Bye bye.